In this video, you'll learn everything you need to know about taking care of your violin so that it sounds as beautiful as possible and lasts you for many years to come. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Megan. I'm a violinist and teacher. I've been playing the violin for over 20 years. I have my bachelor's and master's degrees in violin performance, and I am Suzuki trained currently through Book 7. If you're enjoying my videos, if you find them helpful, the biggest thing that you can do for me is just smashing that subscribe button. It really helps more than you know. And if you're looking for more structure and support along your violin journey, if you're looking for a clear plan to follow, consider checking out Learn Violin Online. Violin Online is my comprehensive learning program that takes you from beginner to advanced and covers everything in between. It's perfect for those who are just starting out and want a clear plan on how to get to solo Bach, and also for those who maybe are returning to the instrument and just need to fill in some holes in their technique. There are 6 learning phases: beginner phases 1 and 2, intermediate phases 1 and 2, advanced phases 1 and 2, and you can follow the videos sequentially in order or pick and choose the ones that you are most interested in. Additionally, we have exciting monthly challenges to keep us motivated to practice. Last month in February, we learned the Swan together, and this month, March of 2025, we are learning how to play by ear. And all members get 100% unlimited feedback from me, so you know exactly what you're doing well, what you need to improve, and how to get there. You can join the waitlist via the link in the description. So be the first to access the program and get a special freebie from me. Without further ado, let's get into how to maintain your violin. Let's first talk about the bow. So the hair on your bow needs to be replaced every so often. How often really depends on how much you play. If you're a beginner player, maybe playing a couple hours a week or less, you probably only need to rehair your bow every year. If you're a more intermediate player playing 2-3 hours a day, you probably need to rehair it about every 6 months. And if you are a very advanced or professional player practicing several hours a day, giving concerts, etc., you probably need to get it rehaired about every 3 to 4 months. Now, the price for a rehair varies. Where I am here on the East Coast of the US, it can run you anywhere from like $70 to $90. It's also possible that if you have a very cheap or very inexpensive bow, that the shop will just recommend to buy a new bow instead of getting it rehaired. So that is an option. Outside of those time frames, if you notice that your bow hair is getting very dirty at the bottom, like mine is, I'm too embarrassed, I don't want to show it, then that's a sign you probably need to rehair your bow. If you feel like your bow hair isn't sticking to the string, if it's not getting a good sound, no matter how much rosin you put on it, you probably need to rehair your bow. And you should expect your bow to be out of commission for about a week or so for that process. Something else that you can do to your bow, it's totally optional, but I have it done to mine, is put some like snake skin or some leather right here. It just gives you a little bit better of a bow grip. Now, for violin maintenance, you need to change your strings every so often just to make sure that they are sounding as beautiful as they can. Again, how often you change your strings depends on how much you play. If you're a beginner playing less than a couple hours a week, you could probably rechange them once every year. If you're more intermediate, playing like 1-2-ish hours a day, probably every 6 months. If you're more professional, playing 3-5 hours a day, probably I've even seen people get new strings like every 6 weeks, but basically like every 3 months. There's a couple different ways to tell that you need new strings. 1, they just sound dull. They don't sound bright anymore. They're ringing less. 2, they are unraveling. This has happened to me several times where just the string will start to unravel and it's uncomfortable to play on because you can't shift. Your finger keeps running into the winding. And another sign you need to change your strings is that your E string is false. I will show you right now because my E string is false, but basically what that means is after you play your E string, the pitch changes. So you'll hear the pitch go down after I play the string. You heard that, right? Another sign that you need to change your strings is that you can't get your fifths in tune. This probably has something to do with my E string being false, but if you are just playing your fifths and they just can't get them in tune, you probably need to change your strings. Now, what strings you use is obviously very personal. I personally use the Peter Infeld Pi strings. I will leave them linked in the description if you're interested. They are a bit more expensive, but I really like them because they're super bright, super clear, and easy to play. Aside from changing your strings, you can also clean your violin. If you want to clean your fingerboard, you can do so with rubbing alcohol. Just be very careful not to get any on the varnish or the body of the instrument. You can also use the rubbing alcohol on your strings here just to get rid of that excess rosin. After you play each day, you should be wiping down your violin and just getting off the excess rosin with a microfiber cloth. But there is also polish that you can buy. As you can see right now, my violin is very dull. It's very matte because I haven't polished it in a while. I'll leave that linked in the description, but it's just a polish you can get and polish your violin up so that it looks shiny and new. If you hear any buzzing sounds on your violin, first check your fine tuners. Sometimes what happens is that the fine tuners at the base will be unscrewed and that will create a buzzing noise. So just double check and make sure that they are all screwed in. If that doesn't solve the problem, it's possible that you have an open seam, which basically just means this part here has come open, and that sounds a lot like a bigger deal than it is. It really happens all the time, especially for those of us who live in climates that have cold weather. Usually when it gets cold, is the time that the seams will open up, but just take it to your local luthier and they will be able to fix it for you. It's never a bad idea to take your violin in once a year just for a checkup. The luthier can check your sound post. They can make sure you don't have any open seams and just make sure that your violin is sounding as great as it possibly can. Also, I'm sure this goes without saying, but just store your violin in a cool, dry place and make sure that there are no animals or children that could be knocking it over. I know for me now, I don't have any animals, but when I lived with my mom in high school, we had a bunch of animals, so I could never leave my violin out because of the animals. So that is all you need to know about instrument maintenance. If you have questions about bow rehearing or changing your strings or anything like that, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Please make sure you subscribe before you go. Check out Learn Violin Online, and thank you for watching.